Yeah. Yeah. No.
No.
A little bit, yeah. And these are beautiful watercolors you all have up this time. So yeah.
Do you know that?
No.
He works for the Roanoke Times. She's worked for the Roanoke Times.
Okay, wait a minute. What's the name?
Matt Gentry.
Okay. In
He's
that
like,
context. Yes. Okay, and that's his work? So okay, fantastic.
He started out, he hiked the entire AT.
Okay.
And I believe that's where his sketching started.
Uh-huh.
I could be wrong, but he sketched a bunch of different places, but some of these are from his AT journey. So every night when he was done hiking, all day he sketched, which is amazing to me.
Yes.
And then he started doing. He has an architecture degree.
Okay. Actually. Oh, okay. So he's got the
He's got that eye, but he didn't start doing the plein air watercolor.
Yeah.
Like maybe 2018. It was
wow.
Before COVID.
Okay, just right before, and then
And he's done all of those drawings back there.
Yeah, we were looking at that. Yeah, we're very great. So take time and after this and walk through and see everything. Yeah, wonderful. All right. Well, am I recording? Is this good? You're hearing me and everything. Okay. All right. Well, I guess we can get started. Is that good with everyone? Yeah. Okay.
Oh, really?
Oh, we can wait. Oh, yeah. It's just 5:30. We can wait a minute.
Okay with that? It says screen sharing on top. That won't be the final recording right now, but it will be up during the slideshow. That little bar up there.
I think we'll just have to deal with it because we want to have recordings.
Well, if you don't want that up there, I can go to my desktop in here and record from that.
Oh, and I guess
as long as it's not. Yeah, no. Are you guys okay with that? Sure.
And you can have the AI companion transcribe the whole thing too. So.
Actually, there's an option where you can just hit. It'll register and do it for you.
Yeah. So okay. Wow.
There. Oh, I figure you can just edit that off.
Yeah.
Skills, I'm good making skills.
With all my editing skills, picked up
well,
the last month. Yeah.
Matt might want to hear though how we were complimenting him. So
That's true.
So yeah. Hi. How are you doing? All right. Okay.
Good. It's not your
Well, thanks for coming out. Yeah. So okay, made it. Yeah. Well, thank you for coming out. Yes.
Thanks for.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, well, it's so good to see you. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, thank you for coming out. Yeah, that was neat. Always loved history and got a degree in history, then got the master's at ODU and kind of just evolved into more of an interdisciplinary approach to learning and history. And it kind of just got a lot into the art side of it. So yeah. Well, I'm so honored to have you here with us. Yeah, so show you I grew up a little. So yes. So yeah, well, yeah, or older, yes. Well, yeah, I know. Well, thank you all so much for coming out tonight. This is the third in a series on artistic footprints through time, the preservation and remembrance of self. So the series has attempted to explore different artistic ways that we have explored on canvas and in other media, how we preserve images of who we are in various ways and in various contexts. And so let's see, how do I advance? Let's see.
Can you just do the arrows?
Yeah, that's what, it does it.
Let me see.
There we go. You got it. All right. Thank you. So the first two sessions, the first one looked at the selfie from Stone Age to Digital Age. As a semi-funny side note on that, that went like an hour and 10 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, and there were like 160 images that we went through in various ways. Next week I have to rehearse, and then later in the month I'm presenting one of the, and I can never pronounce it correctly, but it's the kind of presentation where you have 20 slides and each slide is set for 20 seconds. And you cannot be scripted. You have to go extemporaneously and match the progression of the slides every 20 seconds for 20. So I think it comes out to like about a 5-minute presentation, if they do the math correctly. So I'm having to do that on that particular topic. So I've got to somehow whittle an hour and 10-minute presentation into 5 minutes and be able to advance. So wish me luck on that. I'll let you know how that goes at the next month, session. So anyway, the selfie from Stone Age to Digital Age. Then we did last month, a wise man will find us to be rogues by our face, physiognomy and portraiture. Tonight is a very special topic and presentation. It was a research project that I embarked upon in around 2008 or so, and it has continued to be with me even in 2025. I will still continue, every now and then go back to it and find something new and add and so forth. And this did result in a small book that I published through Politics and Prose in Washington, D.C. And we do have a lucky winner who will receive one tonight if you can stay the whole presentation. All right. So hopefully you'll still be here and you'll possibly win a copy of that book that'll go into more detail on what I'm sharing tonight. But this was definitely a project that was near and dear to my heart. And then next month, I do hope you'll return for Art versus Tyranny, the Ultimate Selfie. And that is also original research on another painting that I conducted and worked through. And it's a fun story to share. It's a deep and timely topic today, I think, with a lot of the challenges we're facing in the world. And I think you'll really appreciate the message and kind of what the artist did. The artist for this particular talk, he did live near us in Rockbridge County. He was originally from Spain, lived in France for a while, fought in the Spanish Civil War, ended up in America, taught at Lynchburg College and Randolph-Macon. His name's Pierre Dara. Really a contributor to the modern art movement, and he's buried in Rockbridge County. He died in 1976. But the painting that will be the focus is one you can see when it's out on display at the Taubman Museum of Art. And that is the case with the one that we're looking at tonight. It also is housed in the Taubman Museum of Art. So this is, out of the whole series, you've now made it to the part where you can actually conceivably go see the works of art that we're talking about. The one last month, unfortunately, it's in Florence. That's a harder one to go see. But this one, you can definitely check out. Yes. Yes.
So when can we see those two?
Okay. Yes, this one, the one we're looking at tonight is out on display now. At least it was the last time I was there, which was a couple of weeks ago. So unless they did something and moved it. The other one for next month is one they just don't put out that often. And you can always ask, is it going to be out on display at some point? But for whatever reason, it doesn't rotate out that often. Taubman Museum of Art in Roanoke, Virginia. And it's the $66 million art museum that was built and opened up in 2008, end of 2008, if I'm not mistaken. And that's during the period I served as director of education. So and that's how I got into some of these works that are in their collection. So I was on the executive team as director of education and educational programming and public programming. And yeah, it was a fun time there, and led to some wonderful memories and research. And if there's anything that I wish and hope you will take away from tonight, is hopefully like some interesting information about a painting, about 19th century America and all of that. But it's truly, I hope you can appreciate the joy you can find in the arts, whether it be poetry, the fine arts with painting and so forth, sculpture, what have you, literature, but to develop a relationship, a real relationship with a unique, special work that means something to you and the fulfillment that can come from that relationship. Because this is, again, it is a period of my life that spanned from, most dramatically, from 2007 and 8 up through 2013, 2014. So that period was not only focused on this particular painting that we're going to be looking at. There were some other projects I got involved in as well, but this was like a real highlight of my life during that time in regard to looking at art and so forth. And I guess I do need to say another highlight was the birth of my son, which was in there too. So just because my wife's here, but it this was huge as well. So yeah, so tonight we're going to be looking at You Cannot Paint Her Too Beautiful for My Imagination: Domesticity, Death, and Photography in a 19th Century Portrait. I got in a habit of just these little opening warnings and such, and this is to hopefully whet your appetite and get you pulled in, but also just to let you know, there is a warning. We are going to be focusing on death and mortality tonight. Some of the images might be a little disturbing to 21st century eyes and 20th century eyes. But you know, it'll be quick as far as some of those images. But hopefully that'll kind of get you excited about what's to come. I will say some of my team, when I really got into the deep throes of research on this topic, it did get a little depressing. I had to look through a lot of the culture of death in 19th century America. And even some of my team came to me and said, you know, you might want to take a break for a little bit, you know, because it can become a little overwhelming and a little depressing at times. There is an assumption, I do believe in to some extent, in what might call Jungian archetypes, symbolism. I believe symbolism is important in art. You know, it sometimes gets debated as to whether or not these are universal symbols that everyone would understand, etc. Symbolism is going to weigh heavily on our talk tonight. And another assumption is that dialogue and questioning do drive us closer to truth. And we need more of that in our society, I feel. More discussion, more open discussion, open dialogue, and questioning. And it was through questions and dialogue that a lot of this story was able to come into existence. And I have to throw in my caveat, as I alluded to earlier, interdisciplinary content is the best. I think when we approach things from multiple perspectives, we can find more fulfilling information and successes in what we look at. It always, you know, I kind of laugh sometimes when we get a little too segmented in our disciplines and such. There was one research project I did, and it was during this time, and it was because of the research on this painting that I developed a relationship with another painting that was actually at the National Gallery of Art. And that was actually fairly successful research, because the National Gallery of Art, I submitted my research to them, and they changed the title of a painting based on that research. And I thought, well, that's pretty exciting. Yeah, I was so proud of that. And I had this wonderful, you know, research that was just, I thought, wonderful. And I have since shown it to ChatGPT, and it also said, this is brilliant. Okay. But anyway, so I submitted that research to an art history journal, hoping to get it published. It was rejected. And they said, it's too much history. You might want to try submitting it to one of those Civil War journals that are out there. And I thought, well, that was a little condescending how they said that. But I thought, well, why not? So because it was related to the Civil War. So I sent it to a Civil War journal. They rejected it and said, this is too much art. And it's like, okay, I can't win. But anyway, hey, they changed the title, so that was cool. But anyway, it was through that interdisciplinary approach that a lot of this story came to light. And also, I want to share a quote from Sherlock Holmes. Again, I can't even reference one specific mystery that we have from Sherlock Holmes, because this was a very common comment that he would make. And it would be where Watson would frustratingly say, I can see nothing. And Holmes would reply, on the contrary, Watson, you can see everything. What you fail, however, to reason from what you see. And that, I love that quote, because to me that is something that drove this investigation as well. This spirit of investigation, this spirit of mystery and intrigue in regard to what just simply paint on a canvas could be trying to convey to me and other viewers, and what did the artist maybe mean behind some of this. And so not only does it become an attempt to not only just see what's there, but to find some level of reasoning behind what we see to make a story make sense from what we see. But in that spirit, and no pun intended, it becomes sort of a metaphorical, or excuse me, metaphysical experience, because here we have an artist, Lilly Martin Spencer in this case, who has been well gone from this world for some time. Hi, come on in. Gone for some time, and yeah, welcome. You're just in time. We're just getting started. And yet through her painting that she created is communicating with the living. And so that drove a lot of this in regard to how I developed the relationship with this particular painting. And this is the painting that we will talk about tonight. Again, unless they've moved it in the past 2 weeks, it is in the Taubman Museum of Art in Roanoke, Virginia, downtown Roanoke. It's titled Jane Eleanor Sherman Lacey and Her Son Edward. It is by Lilly Martin Spencer, 19th century American artist, originally from Ohio, lived a good portion of her career in New York and Newark, New Jersey, New York City, and then in 1858 moved to Newark for a period of time over in New Jersey. And based on the label of the painting, when I joined the Taubman Museum of Art in 2006, it was painted in 1860. That's what they had on the label. This was when the Taubman Museum of Art was not the Taubman Museum of Art yet. It was the Art Museum of Western Virginia, which had been in center in the square for some time, since the early 80s, I guess, when the center in the square opened up to try to bring about a renaissance in downtown Roanoke, which it did, and really revitalized that area, the economy, and so forth. The Art Museum of Western Virginia moved into that space. And in 1988, it acquired this Lilly Martin Spencer work as part of their American collection. They were trying to build a strong American collection, and this added nicely to it. A work by Lilly Martin Spencer, who is a recognizable artist from the 19th century, somewhat unique with her success being a woman at that time. And she was the primary breadwinner for her family. She was the one bringing in the money, which challenged some of the ideals about the household in the 19th century. I used to walk through what was called the Bridge Gallery, where you'd walk into the center in the square, you'd go up to whichever floor now, I can't even remember, I think it was the third floor or so, to go into the museum. You'd walk into the main area and you'd walk back through a hall and then go across the Bridge Gallery, which literally was a bridge between two buildings in downtown Roanoke that are all part of center in the square. And in the Bridge Gallery was a good portion of the American art collection, and this painting was on the wall. I would walk by it every day on my way into work. A lot of the time, I would sort of just scan and look at it as I walked by. Of course, I always found their eyes following me, which is any mark of a good portrait there. You know that the eyes can engage. They're looking at me now as I stand here. Not in a weird way. I know they're not real, but nonetheless, it really, for some reason, captured my attention, and I don't know why. I'd sort of joke. I mean, the way in which she depicts her subjects is very typical Lilly Martin Spencer-esque. The child is slightly exaggerated in form, with childlike cherubesque cheeks, pudgy cheeks. It's a sweet, sentimental scene, which is very typical for Lilly Martin Spencer. It's a domestic scene of mother and child. The mother is gently holding the child, controlling the child. The child almost seems like he's kind of pushing up against her just a little bit and holding on to her hands for security. Of course, a rose that breaks the composition, what is mostly a triangular composition, is broken by a cherubesque figure that is holding a rose. The cherub figure kind of almost plays off of the cherub kind of traits of Edward. And it's not even a mystery as to who these people are because they're in the title. This is Jane Eleanor Sherman Lacey and her son Edward, who is there. Edward may have drawn my attention too, though, because he kind of looks like the kid from The Omen, which was always a little creepy walking by, But that pale skin, the rosy cheeks, and the dark black hair, was sort of intriguing as I'd walk by. And occasionally I would stop on the way to the office, into my office, and I'd look a little more closely. And again, being over programming, education and programming, it was my responsibility to know the collection, to really get to know the works and to think, what kind of programs could we develop around these particular works of art to engage the public? And so I would look at it and, kind of reflect upon it. And generally, my knee-jerk reaction to it was that, as is typical of Lilly Martin Spencer, it was reflecting the cult of domesticity and Republican motherhood, which was the gender-based ideal in America in the 19th century. The belief that women were naturally nurturing and caring and suited to be good mothers and homemakers, whereas men who were not as nurturing and caring and were rough and strong, that they were intended to go out of the home and into the world of politics and work and even war. And so there was somewhat idealistically a gender divide in American society in 19th century. And of course, these are the ideals that in the 20th century increasingly became challenged by women. And most notably in the 1960s and 1970s and the women's lib movement and all of that. And through those struggles, a lot of these gender ideals have waned to some extent. Of course, economic recession and depression and everything else made in the 1970s the need for women, okay, whatever, we need a dual income in our household. And thus was born the Gen X latchkey kids who all of a sudden were coming home, with no parents because the parents both had to work and so forth. And so women made inroads. But this is the ideal that women struggled against in the 1960s and 1970s, but it goes back even to the 1920s with women's movements at that time. Rosie the Riveter stood up to this concept and this construct and gender ideal. But in the 19th century, it was, while arguably also being challenged, the suffragist movement and other movements among women to, within various reform efforts and so forth, women trying to find a public voice and public action, it still was there fairly definitively. Even in regard to how one was to dress. Women were not allowed to wear pants. That would be seen as a violation of these gender ideals. And so women were constrained to wearing skirts and so forth. And in fact, side bit of interest, in the American Civil War, there were more documented women in the American Civil War than any other American war that literally disguised themselves as men and fought. There were some estimated 400 and some women, both North and South, that did that. And there are documented stories of this. There are letters of men saying, yeah, Sergeant so-and-so gave birth tonight. So there was some excitement in the camp. They didn't know. She got pregnant, hid her pregnancy, and then went into labor. And that's how she was found out. One woman was found out because wearing a skirt, a man, of course, is going to catch something like this, right? With both hands. How is a woman going to catch something? With her skirt. And they tossed an apple to a fellow soldier, and instinctively they went like this, and it gave them away. They were a woman, and it was uncovered, and they were sent home. So, some interesting stories about how women were doing that, but part of what threw men off was they had never seen women in pants before. And so if someone's wearing pants and they're, hiding other features, they could get away with actually portraying themselves, and they didn't bathe that often. And so there were ways they could keep that sort of somewhat of a secret. Jubal Early was just disgusted by that practice, and he labeled all of any that he found as prostitutes and sent them home and said they're just sneaking in to make money off of our soldiers, and took care of that way. So anyway, there were definitely ideals that were in place. This reflected these ideals nicely, does it not? It's a domestic scene. She's in the home. From what we can see, there's sort of a Titian-esque background. There's not much detail, any detail behind her, which is not aligned with a lot of Lilly Martin Spencer's works. A lot of times she has cluttered domestic genre scenes done here, which is kind of interesting. But other than that, you have a loving mother with her son being a good mother, holding the child in a caressing manner, a careful manner, but yet still controlling. The child is sitting still. They're both looking out, and so forth. And so I interpreted it. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Oh, no, you're not interrupting at all. Go. Yeah.
Another idealized picture that describes me as a woman is how small her waist is.
Yeah. Oh.
It's about as wide as her face.
Yes, which of course the undergarments would have
yes, but you
forced that too.
You can't pull it.
No, yeah. No, exactly. And Lilly Martin Spencer would do just that, to idealize. I think he said idealize, to idealize these ideals. These again, the way in which he's pictured is so innocent and so like a little child, just a cherub. And like you said, with her here, and there's some other things she did too, which I'll reveal in a little bit, that go right along with what you're saying for that idealistic image of domesticity. And so as a programming education, of course, I said, okay, this is great. This will be great fodder for tying it in with other paintings from the 19th and early 20th century that deal with these gender constructs, gender ideals that were prevalent during that age. And so I remember, even doing a talk, and this was in, let's see, do I even have the date on this? This was like 2007, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was 2007 when I did a talk at Radford University. And yeah, we were still, of course, the Art Museum of Western Virginia. We weren't the Taubman Museum of Art yet. Look at what painting you gave them to serve as the flyer. And it's titled The Cult of Domesticity and True Womanhood as Reflected and Rejected in 19th and 20th Century American Art. Doesn't that sound exciting? Sorry you missed that, okay? But this was one of the ones that I was going to argue was an attempt on Lilly Martin Spencer to challenge these ideals by using art to reinforce these ideals, which is what I found really interesting about Lilly Martin Spencer. And I'd still stand by that. If you think about it, she is the primary breadwinner, as I indicated. She has a public presence through her art. And so she's playing very much a masculine role, and she played with this in her art. And what made her art popular were these domestic scenes that reinforced the very ideal that she was challenging through her work. And so there you go. That was the gist of my talk back in 2007 in regard to Lilly Martin Spencer. So, this was just basically the way that I interpreted the work. And this would go along with some of her other works that you can take a look at here. And you can see what I mean, that there's more details cluttered. She would capture individuals within this gendered construct. This is Peeling Onions around 1852. These women were typically her servants. She had servants that worked in her household. So she was doing okay. They were strong upper middle class based on her work. And so she would have one of her servants depicted peeling onions, and she's wiping a tear. Another one here is shake hands. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Do you know if she was influenced by Dutch realism?
Yes, she was. And some critics said she wasn't quite there. That the Dutch would, in their opinion, and these are critics from the time. So remember, they're also looking at her as a woman. So they may have some issues there. But they said that the Dutch would tend to elevate their subjects, and she didn't. She kept them a little too down to earth and a little, I guess, too real in that sense. But yes.
None of those paintings, I don't think any of them have actual people.
Yeah.
In the Dutch realism.
as far as like actual subjects, or yeah, they may or may not. I'm not sure, but these are her like servants, people that worked in her household, and so forth. And this gets sort of back to the idea of the idealization in regard to how she depicts them. Notice how shake hands, and of course it's kind of comical, kind of humorous. Shake hands with this all this flour on her hands and such. It's like, do you really want to shake her hand? And she's kind of smiling and laughing, like, haha, part of the joke and all of this. But as one art historian has argued, though, what she will do is she is reflecting another ideal about beauty and aesthetics during this period. And it was believed that for middle-class women, you wanted to become, to be pure and innocent was to be as white as possible, but not wearing powder. You couldn't fake it, because that's then you're faking your virtue by putting powder on. You couldn't do that. But only lower class women and prostitutes would do that, would try to hide their less than virtuous nature by putting on powder. But what you could do was enhance your skin tone by putting on blush. And if you've noticed, start noticing, she's wearing blush. They would also use eyeliner and different like bluish kind of stencil on their face, little pencils on their face to have sort of a marble-esque look. And that, so you could enhance your beauty by doing things to enhance your natural skin tone, but you couldn't add to the skin tone. And in fact, you couldn't even use fake, though, because, not fake, real blush. In other words, if you looked like you strained yourself as a woman, that made it look like you were working. And you didn't want that. And so even men would actually, at times, lace their wives' shoes and boots and such so that the woman did not have to bend over and inadvertently get flushed by doing that and have flush in your face. So real, kind of some thought there. And when you look at, a painting like this, if you see it in real life, you really will notice how she enhanced her beauty by adding the blush. And she does it on Edward too, who is childlike, innocent, virtuous. So even with the cherubesque features that she exaggerated slightly, she added to that with the blush and so forth. So the white hand, even though that's artificial, it's still drawing attention to that aesthetic from the 19th century. Here's the jolly washerwoman. She's just too happy doing that kind of laundry. We've got a washer and dryer at home. You just throw the stuff. I've never seen my wife smile like that. Just kidding. Yeah. She won't let me do it because I put colors in wrong or something and ruined something. But anyway, and then we have, this one's fun. Kiss me and you'll kiss the lasses. So she's got molasses there. And she looks in a coy sort of fun way at the viewer. And, it's kind of like, yeah, if you come and give me a kiss, you're going to be getting a face full of molasses. And then the young wife. First stew, look at the poor thing, standing there looking so intimidated. And she's a young wife learning to cook and all of this. So again, all of these paintings, they're showing women doing domestic chores in the domestic sphere, mostly looking happy. This one looking a little concerned. And this would be typically her oeuvre during the 1850s at the very least. This is where she was really making some of her money off of paintings such as this. And many of these were turned into lithographs. She did lithographs for a host of periodicals that were in women's journals during the period. So again, finding a very public face on her part, bringing in money into the household, but yet doing it by reinforcing what she was challenging. Yes?
And none of these are identified.
Yeah, these are all identified. These are all the ones that we were, all of these. So they're 1856.
No,
Oh, right. Yes. Not the names of the people. Although we can look at some of her inventories as I've done, and they've listed like her servant's name at different times. and it may or may not be that person. It could have also been neighbors and such. She did use subjects to capture it. And a lot of times from her writings and such, she would capture her servants and everything that were in the household helping. And I say servants, I mean, it's some of them are, some of them aren't. She didn't have like multiple servants. They weren't that wealthy, but she would have a woman come in and help around the house because she was doing the painting. She was working. And she did have, gave birth to, if I'm not mistaken, let's see, I think it was around 10 children. Yeah. And only 6 survived. So she did witness a childhood mortality rate with her children that was consistent with 19th century mortality rates. But she still had those kids, and so she would have servants come in and help. And her husband, he was a house husband. That's her husband. That one is identified. And it's young husband, first market, not 854, 1854, just so you know, 1854. And he took on, again, gender reversed roles. He helped with the kids and with the servants working with the kids. He went out and did the market. And he's clearly out of his realm of comfort because he's coming home and he's dropping part of it. And then this guy's walking behind him and kind of making fun of him, laughing at him. So yet this is the reality. He is a house husband. He really didn't work. And in fact, what he did, he would be the one stretching her canvases on her frames for her to paint and helping around the house. It was entirely, for this period, a gender reversal. But yet again, even here, using her husband, she kind of makes fun of it in a way, reinforcing like this is not natural. And so she's reinforcing some of those gender ideals by challenging them at the same time. And then this one gets a little more serious, a little more deep and such, and it is titled War Spirit at Home, 1866. And this is her broaching not so much genre painting, even though it is a domestic scene. She is now challenging, or not challenging, excuse me, she's creating a historical painting now. But it's not like Washington on the Delaware, right? Crossing the Delaware. It's not like some of Winslow Homer's paintings of soldiers on the battlefield. She's capturing the home front during the Civil War. Even though it was painted in 1866, she is painting a scene at home from the Civil War. This is Lilly Martin Spencer. This is her. This is her servant. These are her children. And the paper indicates Vicksburg has fallen. And that is like, of all of the dates in the American Civil War, July 4th, 1863 is like a pivotal date because Lee is retreating from Gettysburg. He has been repulsed. The South has taken a hit on the Eastern Front. They are retreating back to Virginia. And on that same day as he's retreating, Grant captures Vicksburg. Yes.
Seeing the painting several times. I personally like these others better. And where do you, are these available somewhere where you see?
Okay, first, by the end of this, you're going to like the one at the Taubman better. But yeah, yes, they are. Yeah. These are at a host of museums. Newark Museum, the Newark Museum has some. Ohio, the Ohio Center or what have you, it's in Columbus, Ohio. Smithsonian has some. They're sprinkled out. But yes, but if you do a Google search and just look up Lilly Martin Spencer's works, you can find out where all of them are. But yes, by all means, the one at the Taubman is not recognized as any of one of her. It was a private commissioned painting. These she was doing to have on display. She was putting them in galleries and such. So these were intended to be the real public facing ones. The one we're looking at was meant to hang in a home for a particularly special reason that we'll get to. So yeah, so excellent observation though. This is what all of these, that's what she's known for. Yeah, oh, this is a great one. I mean, and she's holding the paper so we can see, and there's a lot more to it. We could have done a whole discussion on just this one, but for our purposes, it is her attempt to, again, show the front she knows. There is no man present because the man would be off at the war, or maybe has died, even though her husband was at home, did not fight in the war, and lived. But these are her children, and she's reading the paper, she's listening, but look at also her look on her face. There's some tension between mistress and servant, because the servant's kind of like, are you really being a good mother? Look at how she's holding the baby. And she's more focused on that outward world. So it's challenging and showing the perversion of this domestic spirit that could be interpreted that she's not being a strong mother in this case. And the children are marching along with the news, and they're celebrating what she's reading, this incredibly important Union victory, both at Gettysburg and Vicksburg, which by the capture of Vicksburg, the Union divided the Confederacy in half by gaining control of the Mississippi River. That was an incredibly important strategic victory on Grant's part over in the Western Front of the Civil War. So anyway, she's showing here she can do more than just and I say just, please take that with a grain of salt, a genre scene of a servant wanting to shake her hand with flour on it. This one has a little more weight behind it in that sense. And so that does bring us then back to our painting, the one that's the Lilly Martin Spencer painting that's closest to us in proximity. And again, we're with that background, it's very natural to look at this and see the influence of domesticity on it. And I hope you would see why the museum interpreted it that way. I interpreted it that way. And that's the way it was understood from 1988 when it came into the museum's possession up until 2007, 2008, when questions and starting to reason with what you see took on a very different understanding of this painting, very different understanding. And it began with one particular item, her brooch. And as I would walk by the painting and, reflect on domesticity and all of that, and think about the omen and everything, or whatever, would be in my mind, I would look and I would think, all right, 1860, we weren't positive it was 1860. Maybe we push it a little, and it could have been during the Civil War. Did her husband, this woman, Jane Eleanor Sherman Lacey, did her husband fight in the Civil War for the North and die? Is that his absence? And this was a painting of now this family that's moving forward. You can make up all sorts of wonderful stories off of these things. And I was wondering though, what about that brooch? Because as I look at it, I didn't even notice the brooch. I don't even know if you noticed the brooch because it's kind of small, all right? But when you look at it, and maybe you can make it out better here, there's a little baby with a set of hair. It's painted in black and white. It's painted with gray and black tones, which would indicate this is a painting of a photograph, a black and white photograph. It's in a brooch. It is a little boy. We know that because if you look very closely, the hair is parted on the side. And the one thing you can tell, all right, is that during this period, if the person's hair is parted down the middle, 9 times out of 10, that's a woman or a little girl. If the hair is parted on the side, about 10 times out of 10, that it's a little boy. So we know there's this little boy pictured here. It's like a little baby, okay? A baby with enough hair, you can tell this part, but yes, a baby, yes. Its eyes are right there and there, the eyes, and the little mouth is right there, and the head is kind of tilted a little. And so that pulled me in. I'm like, all right, we got Lilly Martin Spencer, Jane Eleanor Sherman Lacey, and we have Edward. Who's this kid? Where's he coming from? And is this now Edward as a little baby and then Edward standing next? That's possible. Okay, so that really got me excited because I'm like, all right, this is neat. I wonder what this means, because when you start reflecting on the culture of death and dying and mourning in the 19th century, the Victorian Age of mourning, it is a very different environment than 20th century and our century. Because in our culture, we want to keep death away from us as much as possible. We don't want to think about it. We have funeral homes where we place our deceased. We have care centers, nursing centers, where we move individuals at a certain state. We have hospice now, which is trying to bring death back into the home a little bit. But you see, back in the 19th century, you were born and you died in your home, in a home. It was just common. It was expected. You were laid out to rest for 3 days in the home. In fact, in a very unique special room called the parlor. Exactly. Exactly. The parlor. You would be laid out to rest in the parlor. And friends and family would come and visit and pay their respects, all in the home. You basically, the death was a part of life, much more than necessarily our existence in some ways, in some very important ways. And so within that environment, you had a unique and interesting mourning culture that would involve, especially with the advent of photography, but even before the advent of photography, you would have little miniatures done of lost loved ones to memorialize them and put them in a brooch or in a little locket and wear them next to your heart or close to your heart. And this is an example of a brooch that has a young girl, I believe she was 16 when she passed away. And this would be either a photograph taken of her toward the end of her life or a post-mortem photograph. And this is her hair that was in the back of the brooch. So this is the same brooch, front and back, and her hair would have been collected as a memorial, and the mother would have worn that close to her heart to remember her. Keep in mind, infant mortality rate ranged anywhere from 40 to 60%, depending on the time and so forth, but at least 40%. You have 10 kids, 4 of them are going to pass away before reaching adulthood on average. Possibly as many as 5 or 6. Lilly Martin Spencer was an example of that, giving birth to around 10 kids and only having 6 that survived. Not necessarily. I'm not, depending on, stillborn, yes. Probably the full miscarriage, not necessarily based on the statistics, but it could be, again, recorded differently in different regions too and such. But it was generally the childhood diseases that we just don't even think about anymore could run rampant through a family. Yes. No, those are on the internet. so got them from a museum that, yeah. Yes, and you can go to museums that have 19th century mourning jewelry. And there was a whole industry on this, mourning jewelry. And with the photograph, the invention of the camera in the late 1840s, the use of photography, it became in vogue immediately to do post-mortem photography. And yes, this is one of the disturbing images because this is a mother who has just lost her little baby pictured there, and the baby is deceased. And it's a post-mortem image. Here are, oh, and if you wanted to, oh, okay, yes. All right, okay, nope, totally understand. This then is a family, brothers and sisters, and the one on the couch, deceased. It's post-mortem. One last picture of brothers and sisters together. And this one, just sorry, as a father, really touches my heart because this is a father who has lost his little, apparently girl, but not 100% sure, but looks like a little girl. And it's the last photograph of them, and it's post-mortem of the little child. Yes?
When married to my first wife, first got married, she had a death in her family. So we went down, there were country people. And so they had the deceased laying there out in the parlor. But everybody who came by had a camera and they were taking pictures of the dead body. I thought, why on earth would they want pictures of somebody when he's dead? Why not keep the pictures when he was alive?
Right.
I never got that.
It is okay. So that would have been, especially in a more rural environment, country, you know, a little more of tradition, and it stems back to this. It was one way of just capturing one last image of the person to hold with them. And today there is a movement, and it's the, if I'm not mistaken, it's the Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep program. And these are photographers, and they're local. I know one who does this. And they're brought into hospitals when there is a stillborn baby or a baby dies early in, you know, after birth. And they do very respectful photographs of parent with child at the end. And so it's still even today, it's just this desire to have that last memory. And if you look closely on Facebook, depending on who your friend group is and so forth, I have a couple of friends who 20 years ago, they lost a child. They will post the child's picture postmortem, you know, just laying there rested, looks like asleep, and to memorialize the person, even 20, you know, it's something hard to get over. And so this was, you know, incredibly difficult at the time. And so looking at it, you know, I question, is that what we have here? Is she paying tribute to one of her another child who she had lost? And thus, it's not Edward, it's another child. Could that be the case? It sure looked like a similar image. And when you start comparing it to other real images, this is yet another one, postmortem portrait of a little baby, and it's in a brooch, the same similar size. It is not the same brooch by any means. It is a random one, but it's similar design and such that it really got me thinking, you know, could this actually be a symbol for a sign of a deceased child? Yeah.
So they would never have worn brooches with an alive child. Right?
Typically not. Now, I'm not going to say never, because you would also sometimes have a live picture of someone and keep them close to your heart. So that happened too. But generally, when it's something like this, it could be. So we're just still in the, you know, at this point in the story, we're just sort of at the, well, maybe, you know, and I'm just, no. These are all the questions you're asking. Well, could it be? Or is it literally? Like I said, I mean, one of my thoughts was, now that'd be cool if it's Edward as a baby and then Edward and here he is as a 6-year-old or something, you know, that would be cool. So we just didn't know, you know, at this point. But this got me thinking, and I'm like searching for all of these images and buying books on 19th century mourning practices and going through them. And it just starts making me be like, wow, I wonder if. And then I started really reflecting on this, because you got this little cherubesque vase holding a wilted rose. And it is wilted. It's, and I'm like, gosh darn it, that is a symbol in 19th century paintings that death is present, wilted flowers. So I'm like, well, that's, you know, curious. And so then there was one day, and now we're in the Taubman. I mean, okay, so we're going now like a couple of years into this, and I'm standing in the Taubman Museum, and I've got a magnifying glass because I am scouring this thing. And I start looking down Edward's shirt, and I stood back and I went, holy goodness, holy heck. I might have said something else, but anyway, one of my team was walking by, Frank Giannini. I can still see him sort of just lumbering through the museum like this. And I said, Frank, get over here. He comes over. I didn't say a word to him because I did not want to put anything in his head, right? I said, take this, look at his buttons. What do you see? And he looked and he goes, oh, wow. I'm like, what do you see? And he saw exactly what I saw. Going all up and down his shirt are roses, some of them fully open, some of them not, and at various stages. And that is another symbol of the transience of life. The life of the flower, all captured on his shirt. So I'm like, well, that was cool. And then, you know, that really now makes me reflect on this. And so we start looking, and I look at her hand. And by golly, there are 2 rings right there on her finger. And there's a bracelet with a dark band and the letter L for Lacey on it. Well, on her left hand, there's no ring. That's not 100% meaning of anything other than she doesn't have a wedding band on her hand. And she was of the class that probably would have had one, but not necessarily. So this is not like a smoking gun of anything, but it was interesting that her finger, her ring finger, is predominantly put forth, like draws your attention to it, the way she has it rested, and there's nothing there. So does that mean something? And when you start looking at the rings that are on her right hand, right pointer finger, 2 of them, as I said, these resemble mourning rings, which were also common. This is part of mourning jewelry. Individuals would wear a mourning ring that would memorialize a lost loved one. And they would typically have the name of the lost loved one inscribed on the inset. And so she's wearing 2. Did she lose 2 people in her life? Is that what that is? Are they even mourning rings? Well, then there's that bracelet. And there is a 19th century mourning bracelet that would be worn by women who lost a loved one, and it was made out of the hair of the loved one. And here is an advertisement for mourning bracelets and the different ways that you would send the hair. They would attach it to the jewelry and make it in different designs and all of this. And women would wear those. And you look at that bracelet and you look at the dark, look at it closely, it's hair. It's not a leather strap. It has the appearance of hair. And so there's like this smorgasbord of iconography now across the canvas. And then you question yourself, is this because now I'm looking for death? Not literally, but just within the painting. Am I looking for death in order to make this? So I then needed to see, okay, is this just one heck of a coincidence? Does she know this symbolism? Was she a part of this symbolism? Did she capture images of the deceased? And she did. This is a post-mortem sketch of one of Lilly Martin Spencer's children who died. This is one way she dealt with it. She took did a post-mortem sketch of her little baby who had died, and she wrote right here, Lilly Martin Spencer wrote, "She took the cup of life to sip, but bitter 'twas to drain. She meekly put it from her lip and went to sleep again." It's very sentimental, very sweet, very typical 19th century. These are very common kind of memorials for lost children. And here is one that she did of a woman with her mother, just as this is not Lilly Martin Spencer. It's not Lilly Martin Spencer's mother, but she did a sketch, presumably, possibly a study for another painting, but it's a mother just as the mother died and the daughter is next to the mother. So she did do some images. Well, what about paintings? Well, look at this one on the left. This is one of my favorite Lilly Martin Spencers. You're mentioning, how I like all the others better. Well, this one's my favorite. I love We Both Must Fade. I love blue. It's my favorite color. I love the color of that dress. And she is looking in a mirror. Look how she's holding a flower that is wilted. Now, she is not dead. This is metaphorical. She is young. She is youthful. She's presumably beautiful. Not saying she is. She's presumably beautiful. And she's wearing a beautiful, brightly colored dress. But just as time will cause the dress to fade, so too will she and die like the flower. Then this one, Will You Have Some Fruit, is debatable as to whether it's a postmortem portrait or not, but it is definitely has symbolism of death and dying. The fruit she's holding is symbolic of death. The bird cage is open and the bird's about to be set free. That's symbolic of the soul being set free. and so forth. So this one, art historians have agreed, is either a postmortem portrait of a child or just simply a metaphorical reflection on death and dying. This is one she did based off of The Sleeping Children by Francis Chantry, a sculpture. Sleeping children is typically a metaphor for death. So anytime in 19th century, if you're seeing children sleeping, there's an allusion to death. She copies the composition, she plays off of an engraving or a lithograph of a print from King Richard III, a scene where the children are being executed in the night. But in this one, instead of execution, it has Lilly Martin Spencer, that is the artist, her husband, there's her husband, they're a little younger, and two of their children asleep. They are not deceased, they're just sleeping, but there's an allusion to death. But then we have this one, and I don't have a color picture of it, a color image. It's in a private collection. Telford McGuffey, 1871. This is definitively a postmortem portrait that she painted. So she did paint a postmortem image of a child, and this one, yeah, and the symbolism here is it's like on pillows, but it's like clouds up in heaven, the child. And this is the McGuffey of the McGuffey Reader fame too, as well, that family. This one, pardon me? Yep, sure was. And this one is definitively a post-mortem portrait of Nicholas Ward, circa 1858. And notice some similarities with our painting. On a table, this is a really wilted rose. Similar drape on the table, just different color. Similar chair is what's pictured here. But this is, of course, he's we know it's a post-mortem portrait. So she did use symbolism with wilted flowers to represent death. And so this then entirely challenges the interpretation. So some historical digging took place. And what I learned was that Jane Eleanor Sherman Lacy got married in the early 1840s to Roland B. Lacy. They lived in Bridgeport, Connecticut. In the late 1840s, she gave birth to a little girl. The little girl lived a full life. In 1846, she gave birth to a little boy named Edward. And in 1852, Edward died. In 1854, she gave birth to a little boy named Henry. In 1855, little Henry passed away due to diarrhea, which was very common, dehydration related to diarrhea. Do not know how Edward died in 1852. In 1857, Jane Eleanor Sherman Lacy, in 1857, so she's got one daughter who's now aging and is going to live a full life. She has lost two sons. She gives birth in April of 1857 to a little boy named David. David lived until 1944, and he's buried in San Diego. He lived a full life. But 8 days after giving birth to David, Jane Eleanor Sherman Lacy died of puerperal mania, which is postpartum depression. It is arguable as to exactly the circumstances surrounding it. In all likelihood, she died of infection, and she had been acting erratic, and she was diagnosed with puerperal mania. It was probably the infection, and she died 8 days after giving birth. So by 1860, Edward has been gone for 8 years. Another baby had been born and died within a year, and Jane Eleanor Sherman Lacy had been dead for 3 years in 1860. So this is not a live painting, and I would argue this is a memorial to Jane, to Edward, and to Henry, that Henry's represented there as well. So to help us date the painting, looking at this painting of one of Lilly Martin Spencer's children and her husband, look at the room, look at the composition. This we know was painted in 1857. Notice the tablecloth is exactly the same as the tablecloth in the Jane paint portrait. Notice how they have the same shape. They're very similar. They have the table off to the side. This is square, this one's round. Same tablecloth. They both have something resting on this. This has light coming in. They're alive. They're all good. They're alive and well. The chair is the same. The two chairs are the same. And the composition is similar, except now you have engagement between the sitters. They're alive. This one, they're just staring out. They're just staring out. And when we go back to this one, the one where you'll kiss the lasses, it's interesting. If you look in the back room, go to the back room, and you're going to see this one also painted in 1856. You'll see a similar tablecloth. You do see a fragile glass little bowl and a slightly wilted flower, which is kind of interesting that she'd have that in there. But what's kind of cool, similar tablecloth, what's neat is this room is where they're seated. It's in her house. And you can actually sort of make the connection because look at the carpet. Carpet's the same, the table's the same, and so forth. So that's kind of neat. You're actually seeing in one painting the room where the other painting would be completed. So I would argue then, based on the historical record, which does indicate their death dates, all of that, that this painting, and based on the reading of Lilly Martin Spencer's letters, that the painting was painted circa 1857, not 1860. Her husband commissioned the portrait from Lilly Martin Spencer in order to memorialize his recently lost deceased wife, his little boy he lost in 1852, and the way to make the composition work and seem more realistic is by including a brooch memorializing Henry. And so this led me on a trip to Connecticut. I had to go to Connecticut and do more research. This is what Connecticut looked like at the time of Jane. I found their cemetery, their grave site. That was kind of cool, real interesting. There's Jane's, J-E-L, Jane Eleanor Lacey. And then Edward's tombstone had been knocked over. I had to push dirt away. I'm on my hands and knees, like pushing it away gently and respectfully, but still I wanted to see it. And there it is. Henry's, I could not find. I met Jane's great-great-granddaughter, Mrs. Noble, lives in Greenwich, Connecticut, did research through obituaries, etc. I actually found her home, went to her home. I'm like, I am 1 mile away, according to GPS. I am not passing this by. And I went to her house and I just parked, walked up. Her and her husband were leaving to go somewhere. I said, are you Mrs. Noble? She said, yes. I said, this is going to sound crazy. My name is Scott Crawford. I'm from the Taubman Museum in Roanoke, Virginia. I showed her, thank goodness, I had a digital image of a printout of the painting. And she goes, well, that was my painting. And I'm like, yes, I thought so. And they invited me into their house. She showed me where the painting had been hung in her house. She is the one that through Sotheby's sold it to the museum in 1988. That was cool as anything. She shared with me their Lacey family crest. And so this is kind of what we learned from all of this. The painting is almost certainly, I would say it, as close as I could to being certain, it is a mourning portrait that's memorializing Jane, Edward, and Henry. As for the sitters, as I indicated, Edward died at age 6 in 1852, Jane died in 1857 due to purplemania, and Henry died of diarrhea as a 1-year-old in 1855. The painting was in most likelihood, almost certainly, painted in 1857. Lilly Martin Spencer moved from New York City to Newark in 1858. She was very busy during that time, and her letters complained she wasn't getting many commissions. Jane's former husband, because she's deceased, the widower, he remarried in 1859. So I'm being a little, thinking maybe he wouldn't focus on a mourning portrait of a previous wife as he's courting and getting married. 1857 fits the timeline somewhere between between May and the end of the year of 1857 that the painting was probably painted. It also fits with the other painting we know was painted in 1857 that I showed you. The provenance is Roland Lacey, the husband. He had it commissioned. Their daughter, Mary, the one who was their first child, she lived a full life. Mary Lacey Hunter, she had the painting. Then Jane Sherman Hunter Tuckle, her daughter. Then Charles Tuckle. Then Mrs. Noble, who I met. And then through Sotheby's, they auctioned it and had no idea that it was a post-mortem portrait. They just thought it was just a portrait of great-great-grandma. But, and this is the most important thing of all of this, because post-mortem portraits were very common. They're a dime a dozen in the 19th century. We knew Lilly Martin Spencer painted them. Who cares? Okay, this is why we care. This right here. This painting provides an opportunity to explore the impact photography had on Lilly Martin Spencer's work. Because this is an area art historians have not looked at all, is how she used photography in her work. In 1856, she wrote to her mother, Spencer wrote to her mother, portraits that used to be the mainstay of artists, photographing has almost entirely destroyed that branch, for they furnish 2 or 3 pictures for the lowest price that an artist is obliged to ask for painting a portrait in the ordinary way. She's having a business crisis because she's trying to compete with photography. And photography is set up a camera, take your picture, you get it developed. It's a really realistic look of you, picture of you, and it's cheap. You to sit down and me paint you, it's going to cost you more. So she was having some competitive issues, but she was a smart businesswoman. And this is what's really a little entrepreneurial side of her that has been ignored. Because look at this, a letter to Spencer from Robert Bernard, January 1864. Please find herewith the dress of my little daughter when her photograph was taken. In the little box, please find her hair and corals, and also the little garters and drawers. I also send you a picture taken when she was 2 years of age. It may give you some idea of her eyes, etc. She was about 4 when her photograph was taken, which you have, and about 4 years and 8 months when she died. Of course, we desire the portrait from the photograph as stated by my brother. How's she capturing images of people she never saw? How does she capture Edward, who died in 1852, when she's painting it in 1857? And Jane, she never saw Jane. Jane's down in Connecticut. She's not probably, how do they do it? Because she had a mail order business where you could ship to her the clothing you wanted your deceased loved one to be painted in. So now she could see the color, the design. They sent color of her hair because you don't get color in the photograph. So they sent lockets of her hair so she could capture the right color. She uses the photographs to capture the image. And we find letter after letter after letter during her almost entire career making money off of postmortem portraits by using photography. Here with Telford, if you remember, the picture was received this morning, and I hasten to express to you my satisfaction with it and my admiration of it. The conception is beautiful and the execution masterly. The likeness is quite as good, nay, better than could have been expected from the very poor tintype which you had for your only guide. The father is writing the artist saying, I know that wasn't a good picture, but darn, you did a good job with it. He had sent her a picture. Letter to, huh? Probably not like that, but yeah, no. She then would take artistic license, and she pictured the pillows in all likelihood. Now, maybe he was doing something similar, but she had the likeness now. But you're hitting on something that is also an important question. Okay, so hold that question because we're coming right back to it. That's good. Okay, so another letter to Spencer from Caroline McGuffey, 1871. The beautiful picture of our darling angel boy, which you have so exquisitely and wonderfully painted, my dear Mrs. Spencer, was given to me yesterday, and it is such a delight and joy to me that I must send you a note of thanks. It is a really beautiful thing as a work of art, and as a portrait, it could hardly be excelled. As I sit and gaze upon it, my darling seems really to be with me. Because if we're wondering why people would go to this much trouble and to do this, this is why. They could sit there and look at the painting of the deceased loved one and feel like their presence was still with them. She beautifully articulates it, but this is the one I'm going to get choked up on maybe. So forgive me if I choke just a little. This one is the most touching thing I've read, I think, ever. Letter to Spencer from Mrs. Thomas Brown, March 1882. You cannot paint her, too beautiful for my imagination. To me, she was all that is lovely, a sweet, sympathizing friend, sister, and daughter, all in one. And I long for the time when I can once more gaze upon those features, silent though they be. Those eyes will look at me once more. Those lips shall speak, though in tones too soft for mortal ear to hear. Though silent in body, our spirits are still as one. God grant your genius may grow brighter, and the conception be a perfect Laura Brown. And that is a mother desperately wanting her Laura Brown to be back in her life, if not physically, in the form of a painting for those reasons. It's beautiful. And that is possibly what led Roland B. Lacey, who has lost 2 sons and a wife in a matter of 1852 to 1857, in 5 years, to memorialize them in one painting in a manner that's believable and realistic, is the way that they did, so that he too could be with them again. And so that is the importance of this painting. It's not that it's post-mortem. That's a neat little twist to everything. When we started off as just a reflection on domesticity and gender ideals of the 19th century, it took us down a very different road to memorialize 3 individuals. This is not a portrait of just Jane Eleanor Sherman Lacey and her son Edward. It is also Henry. Henry is also in there, I would argue. But that leads us to the pictures, because Mrs. Noble had a 19th century photograph book that I did not appreciate the importance of when I spent 3 days up in Connecticut doing research and had it in my hands and I was looking at it. It didn't click. It took me to come all the way back to Roanoke for it to click, necessitating another trip, a whirlwind trip, literally drive up, see Mrs. Noble one more time, and the next day come back home. It was awful. But I needed to see these pictures again. And it might be Edward. They look similar. This would have been exaggerated, cherubesque, and so forth, based on how she painted. It might be. I don't know. But it does show that the family, the Lacey family, was taking photographs during this same time period. And then there was this lady. I don't think this is necessarily Jane, but we had worked with a person from Virginia Tech who did some interesting work on photography and so forth, and used a computer program to overlay, to size them up. And anywhere it's black is where they match. Anything white is where the hairline's a little off, so the hairline's off. It's inconclusive. It might be her, it might not. I'm not positive on that one. I felt a little more secure about Edward. The other part that might be interesting, this goes back to your question now. This is a painting titled Daydreams. It's by Thomas Eakins, circa 1883. The reason I bring this one up, and with Thomas Eakins, is because the Taubman Museum, where this is, also has the photograph that Eakins used to create the painting. Photograph and the painting are exact. And we know from Thomas Eakins, he did a trick with photography. He went one step further, not just holding it and painting it. He projected it onto the canvas and traced it and then painted it. That's what Thomas Eakins would do and there's evidence of that based on scans and everything else. And when I read this from Alexander McGuffey again, with little Telford there, he wrote, the only thing about the picture which I would wish to have you touch, if you were here, is the bridge of the nose. The tintype faithfully followed gives a nose almost without a bridge. I never noticed this defect in the tintype until I saw it in the painting. Was she projecting in a similar manner as Eakins, projecting photographs even onto the canvas to help her with some of her realism? I don't know, but it's interesting, and I would love to x-ray some of her paintings and see if there's evidence of it. We just haven't been able to. This one, no. This one, no. This one, she's just resting. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, but the photograph, I mean, it's perfect. Exactly. So, yeah. Yes. So anyway, that's the story of Jane, Edward, and Henry. And also, hopefully, through this portrait, even though it's maybe not her famous one of her famous ones, and all of this, it provides some secrets or clues to secrets that may relate to her. And it's also just a few things. It's the third now definitively identified postmortem portrait by her. And it is the only postmortem portrait that includes more than one sitter, and the only painting that provides a clue as to how she captured their images, because that, by using black and white paints, that's a photograph. So she's even revealing within this canvas how she captured the images. So I hope you found this somewhat interesting, and we'll come back next month for what will be a great discussion about art versus tyranny. But before we leave, one lucky winner will receive a copy of the book so you can read more details about all of this. And it's under a chair. There is a secret emblem, and I think, so reach under your chair. Yeah. And I think if you reach under that one right there, you were like, is there? No, wait a minute. Check this one. Hold on. Hold on now. Yes, you are our lucky winner. Yay. Yes. Do I know? Yes. Whoever's close. Okay, we'll just go with it. Yeah. She was so close. All right. But do you have any questions or anything?
It's interesting to me because we spent a lot of time in West Africa, where artists do a lot of painting realistically. And I keep trying to tell them, you don't need your paintings of a building, right, or even a person. You know, we gotta, and because now they're even taking photographs and putting on canvases.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
So I said, what we need to do is get artists to interpret. And what she's obviously commercial.
Yes. On this side, yes, definitely.
Well, even the other one seemed like to me to be like Norman Rockwell for Saturday Evening Post. I mean, that type of commission.
Yes, and I have a whole lecture on Lilly Martin Spencer and Norman Rockwell, and I compare. Ah, you're brilliant. Yes. So, I am so glad you picked up on that connection. But you're exactly right, because she'd sell her images to different periodicals that were popular in the 19th century. And you're right, she captured a lot of that sort of ideal Americana and all. And she was definitely, with these commissions, you know, just yet another way to bring in revenue. And yeah.
Some of those paintings that she did, like with the of all the servants, look like photography in a way.
Yeah.
The way the women are smiling is just not. It just seems like a very in the moment, like capturing, if that makes sense.
Yes. And that is where then, you know, if anyone were to run with this, which I wish someone would, that has time and energy and like is a graduate student in an art history program or something, would get somehow permission to x-ray some of these and look for evidence of anything Aikens-esque. And you know, and it very well, it's probably very unlikely she was doing that, but she could have, and we just don't know. And she was definitely, because there's too much historical documentation, she was using pictures, at least as a guide, to capture postmortem images. And so the very thing that was, she's such a, you know, contradictions. She's challenging domesticity by supporting domesticity. She's bemoaning the impact photography is having on her business, while she uses photography to open up an entire other revenue stream with postmortem portraiture. So she's, you know, kind of complex. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. she would be one I would use in, you know, in a business seminar talking about, okay, emerging technologies. Do you bemoan or do you use it in a new way to open up opportunities? The what now said that? Yeah.
One word is unnecessary.
Yes. Yeah. She was
using
skills. Yes, exactly.
And that was her job.
Mm-hmm. That's all she did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's all she did.
Why her husband wasn't working? Was it because he needed to support her work?
A little.
He needed to take care of the other things.
You really, and now my memory's trying to pull back on that. There was part he had some illness at times and wasn't able to reliably work. He definitely was needed in the home, though. I mean, he really was. It was, you know, even some of her letters indicate that Ben, his name was Benjamin, that Ben was having to take care of the children because she was so busy and all this. And there's one letter that's kind of humorous, and you can relate probably if you've ever had children, you know, the kid fell, banged a tooth, knocked out a tooth or something. Ben did not do a good job thinking she's having to be distracted, you know, that kind of thing. But he was neat, and he did. He did is known painted, helped her out a little bit, and actually some of his paint from his, you know, went in where she told him, and so he may have, who knows, he may have painted the black background surrounding Jane, something as simple as that. He might have been the one to take care of that for her, you know. So yeah. Well, thank you all so much for coming out, and yeah, thank you. And I do hope you'll make it next time. I think you'll really like it. It's tied to World War II era. There's a poem that we'll look at that inspired the painting, and you know, it's really, I think, an interesting story as well.
It's funny that you asked that. So this is the third time, or this is the third attempt to record it. We recorded the other two, but in different. But the first one is definitely on YouTube. The second one we're still trying to get down. Yeah, we're still trying to. Richard needs to put that on a USB that is bigger than ones that we have in the museum.
These things get harder and harder.
We will put it on YouTube, and this time I think we've hit on pretty much what we're going to stick with. Maybe we use Zoom.
Yeah, see how that worked? It should have worked well.
I
know. Yeah.
The only thing missing is that we don't have a webcam. If we had a webcam, we could put it here maybe and see his face while he talks, so we would see the video, the presentation, and the spot.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, please do your next one. Well, thank you very much. You take care. So good to see you.
It's hard to describe.
I've had a really hard time trying.
Thank you for doing this.
Yes.
Yes.
Thinking about contributions.
What are you?
Yes.
Strange things like these.
Look there or something. Where is
Well, thank you so much.